Can I have your name over there? Angie, I see you have something there. What is that in here? Did you steal that? Did you buy it? From who? From where? Forbidden Flavors. That's a corporation. Okay? So did you talk to the corporation?
No.
And if, what is that? Is it coffee?
Yeah.
Okay, so what if the coffee was bad and you got sick? Would you go find the person who sold it to you and sue them? No. Why not? They're an agent. The agent doesn't have obligations under the contract. The person selling it, the employee, creates the contract on behalf of, in that case, the corporation. And the contractual obligations occur here. You cannot sue this person. That's the quick version we're going to give you tonight. Because your contract's up here. And why can't you sue this person? They're actually not part of the deal. They're an agent.
What's the squiggly line? Is that?
That's the magic thing that you don't need to know about. That's not the information you're looking for. I'll explain that squiggly line to you. You're so sick of it when you take Law 2. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
I'll just tell you it's not a contract. Okay? It's something. There's something there. There has to be something there. And it has to be basically a reason why this person gets to be an agent is right here. Okay? But if they are an agent, and most employees are in that type of circumstance, they're not the one you sue because contract's here, not there. Communication occurs here, yes or no, or the offer. The obligation occurs here, that's called agency. Got it? All right, let's go on to number 2. Ready? You need your radiator repaired. So you take your car to Canadian Tire. And you say, how much will it be? And they say $150 to repair it. And you go, okay, that's fine. Who's your contract with? Canadian Tire. But Canadian Tire doesn't fix radiators. They actually have to send them out to somewhere else to fix them. So they send it to Brandon Radiator Repair. Brandon Radiator Repair takes it out, fixes it, puts it back in, takes it back, goes back to Canadian Tire, and Canadian Tire says, here's your bill. What happens if the radiator is defective? Who do you sue in your contract? Brandon Radiator or Canadian Tire?
Canadian Tire.
Why?
You paid.
Your contract is with Canadian
You can
Tire.
do it in one word. Contract.
Teach us, Murray.
I did. You learn. You can say, why? One word.
Payment?
What?
Payment?
Privity. Not payment, privity. Right? Because your contract is with them. You've hired them, they've hired these people. What if the radiator is defective? Who do you sue? You sue Canadian Tire, and who does Canadian Tire sue? C. Okay, right? So, what if C has no money? And you sue Canadian Tire? Can they say, sorry, we got C to do it, they got no money, so we don't have any money to give to you? Do they get to do that? No, why? Yeah, that's where the contract is, right? So, first question is, what's this called? It has a name. Most of you will be familiar with this one. Subcontract. It is. It's called a subcontract. Is that allowed?
Yes.
Okay. I'm I'm going to come pick on this woman right here. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. They make it a little bit personal. I hope they're not too personal. You ready? First question is, are you married?
No.
Okay, so let's presume that you're going to get married. That's the first. That was the harder one. Okay, here's the second question. Who's your favorite musician? Make up something that they won't know. I won't know who it is either, okay? Make up anybody that you, first person comes to your mind. Doesn't have to be really your favorite. For where
Beatles.
Can't use Beatles.
Band.
Yeah, pick a person, one. A one. It's easier with one. A single.
No, Justin Bieber.
Brian. Yeah.
Justin Bieber. Okay. So let's just, okay, tell your name.
Hannah.
What? Hannah? Okay, so Hannah says, I'm going to get married. It's going to be a big deal. And I'm going to make sure it's a super big deal. And I'm going to pay for Justin Bieber to come sing at my wedding. Okay? And you're so excited, and you have all these invitations, and everyone's, oh, go, Justin Bieber. You know, it's going to cost you, $500,000. But what the hell's money if you're getting married, right? Okay? So you hire Justin Bieber. And can I have your name? What? Famid. So on the day of your wedding, Hannah, Famid shows up. And you see him in class and everything, but it is your big day, and it is your wedding, and there he is, and he's dressed nice and everything, right? But you kind of think, I don't think anyone invited him. Right? I don't think he was invited. Right? And so you go up to him and say, Famid, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, I'm here to sing. And you go, no, you're not. I have who? And he goes, yeah, I know, but Justin Bieber's really busy. So he got me to come. He's hired me to come. And I'll be singing. Is that okay?
No.
I thought you just told me it is.
Subcontract.
You hired Justin Bieber, and Justin Bieber hired Famid. And Famid, just sing a little bit for us, okay? All right, maybe it's good. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. Is that okay?
No.
Why not? You told me it was okay. Didn't you tell me?
She didn't agree to it, yeah.
What?
She didn't agree to it. She wasn't aware.
I didn't agree to it. I didn't even know that they took my radiator out. I didn't know that.
Going down some rabbit holes.
I'm not. I'm right here. Look. You hire A hires C, that's okay, it's subcontracting. Hannah hired Justin Bieber hired Hamid, that's okay, it's subcontracting. Right?
What was offered was not given.
Sure it was.
No. Justin Bieber show.
What?
Wasn't the contract for Justin Bieber to perform?
Wasn't the contract for Canadian Tire to fix?
Well, Canadian Tire did have it fixed for you,
Yeah, and Hamid did sing.
but not Justin Bieber.
Not Canadian Tire. How's this different, folks? Okay, how many of you say there is something different here? There's something wrong here, right? You're going to go, no, right? Why? Because sometimes who matters, right? So, does who matters when I'm getting my radiator fixed? No. All I care about is no leaky, right? That's all I care about. No. But here, you've hired someone, and it matters who it is. You're not allowed to subcontract in those situations. So there's lots of these, right? You hire the world's most expensive lawyer. They can't send their junior, I was going to say bad things, the little fila de puta, to come and do their job for them, right? You know, the guy that doesn't know what they're doing. You know, you hire the best doctor. They can't send a nurse in to do it, right? You're not always allowed to subcontract. That's the point. Often you are. If you're getting a house built, do they have subcontractors come in?
Yes.
All the time. Do you care? No. As long as the drywall's nice and clean and the paint looks good and the wiring's up to code and I don't get electrocuted, I don't care who does it. So subcontracting is allowed sometimes. The question is who matters? And it looks like this. But B only gets the right to sue A. And then A may have the right to sue C, depending on the contract that they have. And this relationship has no impact on this relationship.
So then B can still sue A.
Yeah.
If C, and then A can sue C, but if C can't come up with the money, B can still sue A.
That's right.
Okay.
I'm getting my money from Canadian Tire.
Because so B has absolutely no relation to C.
No, they can't, because there's no agreement here. Why not? This is privity. There's no contract here. And therefore, there's no relationship. Got that? So that would hate to sue subcontracting. This one is an interesting thing. People are not aware of this, but it's actually very common. This is called assignment. In order for you to understand assignment, you've got to be able to differentiate between rights in a contract and obligations in a contract. So I'm going to go back to my back row. Gentleman right here. Right there, you got that? Okay. Can I have your name again? Liam? Liam, will you buy this chocolate for $1? Okay? He says yes. So we have a contract, but the contract, although we're not dealing with consideration, which is did both sides give something. We're dealing with are there rights and are there obligations. Contracts always create rights and obligations. So what's Liam's right under the contract? What's his obligation? What's my right under the contract? And what's my obligation under the contract? You have to understand that to understand assignment. It shouldn't be hard. Right? So this is how assignment works. You ready to watch? With assignment, one side has to complete their obligations. So for me, that would be, have I completed my obligations?
Yes.
Now what I can do is I can move my rights. And I can say, pay her. And you have to. I'm going to move it to her. That's called assignment. It's the ability to move rights to another person when you complete your obligations. So, this is the rule that comes closest to breaking the privity rule. Because if you don't pay, can I have your name? Marie. Marie can actually sue him. And I actually can't. Because the contract was assigned. So, what happens here with assignment is, I complete my obligations, I can move my rights down to here, and you have no say. So I have to do two things to assign. I have to complete my obligations, and I have to tell you, I have to notify you that I'm sending that over there. Now, a lot of you are going to go, that seems very odd or strange or unusual, right? This actually happens all the time. It's actually a business model. So, when you hold the payments, and you go to any of these furniture places, what they do is they use the furniture to create a debt. This is what they do. So, when you go to Leon's and decide you're going to buy a couch for $1,000, Leon's will sell you the couch for $1,000. They're not actually after the $1,000. They don't actually get it most of the time. What they do is they get a debt that has the capability of getting interest. And what they do with that contract is they deliver you the couch, which means they have
Their obligations.
and then they move that right to, does anybody know?
collections?
Well, it is. It's effectively city finance. It's not really collections. It's a financial group that buys that debt from them. They buy the debt. But this can happen in all sorts of circumstances. There doesn't have to be any movement here. There doesn't have to be an agreement. There doesn't have to be a debt. It's the idea of moving obligations. And city finance would buy that $1,000 debt for $1,100. Why would they pay that much for that debt?
How much money they're going to make on the interest?
Because they do the math and they figure they're going to make $13.50 in interest. So Leon's sells debt. And they can do it because of this concept. It's called assignment. And don't restrict it to Leon's. Anybody can do this at any point in time. Banks do this all the time. They will take a bunch of mortgages. They've lent the money. They've fulfilled their obligations. They will sell them to another bank to raise capital for, they want to expand into, Argentina, mines and stuff, but they don't have enough money. They will sell a bunch of debt off. They'll move it to another person. You'll get a notice that you're not paid Toronto Dominion Bank. It doesn't happen that often, but it can. So this is a valid legal thing to do. It's called assignment. You must complete your obligations. Then you can transfer your rights. Give notice. That person must. And this actually shifts. A's out because A has nothing to sue for. They've given their rights to this person. They don't have any obligation because they have to have completed them in order to have done this. So they're gone. And even if there was a contract that said, Murray and Liam, it would be Marie who sues on that deal, even if it's in writing. But they'd have to prove it was assigned, and therefore she gets the right to sue. Got it? Any questions about that?
Can you modify the contract somehow to limit assignment?
It would have to be a term.
Okay. Something in the offer.
All the terms and all the obligations are in the offer. So if it's in the offer, but they can't do it, they can't. Because you can't move a deal that you agreed not to. You can't change the deal. But most people don't do this. They don't. And it shouldn't really matter to you then. Because why do you care? Why would you ever care? It doesn't change your obligations, it just moves them to someone else. I can imagine a situation, you got moved to TD and you hate TD, well, too bad. You have no say. Okay, let's deal with one. I'm going to throw out a set of facts before I deal with this last one so you can understand, okay? How many of you lease, rent, place to stay? How many are in a lease? A lease is what I'm really after. That 12-month thing or something like that, okay? So, who's in a lease? Put up your hands, okay? How long is it for? How long is your lease for?
1 year.
1 year.
Yeah.
So you have a 1 year lease. And let's just say something happened and you decided that this is stupid. You're sick and tired of coming to class on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights and listening to Marie be a moron. And you just want to go and play your ukulele in, where? Somewhere. She wants to go to, what? Corpus Christi. And play her ukulele, and she gives it all up. But she's got this lease. So she calls up her buddy and says, hey, will you take over my lease for me? And they say, sure, I'll take it over. What is that? Is it agency, subcontracting, assignment, or something else? let's see, look, is it agency?
No.
Has she made a deal for someone else that they're bound in that deal because they're an agent?
No.
No. Okay. Is it subcontracting?
No.
They will rent it to me, I will rent it to you.
No.
No, you are not an agent.
That's agency. This is an agency. They rent it to you, you rent it to them. Could it be that? What's the problem then, if this is what it is? What? Or more important thing, what if they don't pay at all? Who gets sued? Right? You don't want that. You don't want to be sued, so that doesn't work. There's an assignment.
No.
No,
Why not?
because you're transferring rights, not obligations.
Yeah, assignment, you can only transfer rights. Here you're transferring the obligation to pay. You can't do that. So it could be this, but that would be dumb. So how do you do this right? It isn't that. It can't be this because you're transferring rights. You don't want this. You go to the third one, fourth one here. And this, by the way, is our old friend, novation. Novation can be set up like this. So with novation, what we had was a contract between the landlord and you, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to make a new agreement. Everyone's making a new agreement. This person's going to let you out. They're going to put this person in. There's going to be a new agreement between them. That is going to have what effect on this agreement? What's going to happen to this agreement when this agreement replaces it? It's going to end it, which puts you under no obligation. So this new agreement between the new person and the landlord is going to replace your agreement. Even though it's between different people, it's still the same place. You can't have an agreement where you have to pay for it and they have to pay for it, right? So this is called novation. It's a new agreement that replaces an old agreement. And it has this, it can have the same effect. Novations take a lot of different forms, but that is actually one of them, where the new agreement replaces the old agreement and it's between different people. Novations can also be between the same person and not have that form. We make a new agreement that replaces it. That's still a valid thing. Go ahead.
So in this situation, the way I always saw sublet, because all this is two different sides. This is also where you have no intention of wanting the right to renew that lease and give it to somebody else.
But you're also given the obligation to pay. Right? You're transferring both rights and obligations.
In this case, you're transferring both.
You are.
Where you were originally going, or I thought you were going, was the idea where I get someone to sublet my place, but when I come back after 3 months.
Peachy's really nice.
It's still my lease, but they've been paying me to cover the cost.
Okay, that wasn't the fact situation I wanted you to think of. I wanted you to think of, she wants out and wants to go.
Message.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the proper way to do that is, the safest way for her to do that is through novation. It's the right approach, where the new contract replaces hers and ends her obligations, and it's replaced with a new obligation with a new person. Got it? Doesn't it seem like 3 hours is particularly long tonight? We've covered a lot of ground. And And here's the good news, folks, is it's going to place us in a real nice situation for moving ahead nicely next week, because I can give you homework, you can actually do it, you can understand it. We've covered most of the things. I'm actually going to move to the endings at this point in time, because that's where we're at. And I'm actually going to reveal the mysterious number 2 that I didn't tell you anything about, except tell you innovation was one of them. Remember that? So, where we're at is, if all the elements are proved, if you come to the conclusion that they're all proved on a set of facts, and either there are no flaws, or a person would use the flaw, that contract must have an ending. All contracts have an ending, and there are only 3. The first is that it's performed. Performing is easy to understand most of the time. It's the contract says you have to do something. If you do it, you've performed it. You have to understand what's in the contract, what is obviously meant. You have to understand all the obligations in that contract. But if all of them are done, which they normally are, it's performed. That's by far the most common ending, right? So if we go back to you and your coffee, did you pay for that? How was it? Was it good coffee? I just got beans from them, and they were exceptionally good. I really like them for good flavor. Anyways, I grind my own beans. So they were very good. So that's being performed. I don't have a lot to say about performance. But there are a couple of things that I do want to mention that are kind of useful, okay? So the first thing I want to tell you is you cannot refuse cash. If I have a contract for $100 and you give me a $100 bill, I actually have to take it, no matter if I don't want to or anything else. You cannot refuse cash. And that's because of what it says on cash. Anybody got any dollar bills on them? I mean, I don't. Anybody? Canadian money? No? That'll do. It doesn't matter what it is. 5. What's it say on there? What's the smallest print say? Oh, keep going. What's it say? And smallest print. That is the smallest print, and that's what it says. This note is legal tender. So do you know what tender means, folks? When you tender something, what do? If you are to tender your resignation, what are you doing? You're giving it, right? So you're giving this, right? So that thing is legal to give. That's what that means. And that's because unless the contract says no cash, you can always pay in cash. You always got to comply with the contract, but if it says $20, it doesn't say what form that is. So if I want to give you a check, you can say no. If I want to give you a money order, you can say no. But if you want to give me a $20 bill, I can't say no to that. It's always legal to tender cash, unless the contract says otherwise. So how many of you don't want to always get paid in cash? Like, why would you? Why wouldn't you want cash?
You can lose cash.
You can lose it, and what else?
It can get stolen.
It can get stolen. So you might not want, if you've got a $10,000 contract, you may not want to be paid cash. If you don't want it, you've got to put, here's how you must pay in the contract. And if it says in the contract will override the normal rule. While you must take cash, you do not have to take coin. There's a statute that sets out the maximum amount of coins that you have to take. And it's a Canadian statute, you don't need to know this, it's called the Currency Act. Currency is money. And it is normally around 20 coins. There is an exception when it comes to dimes. So you don't have to write this down, folks. What you have to know is there are limits to how much coin you have to take. So what it says is, if it's $2 or more in coin, the most you have to take is 40. That's how many? $40 divided by 2. That's 20 toonies. If it's $1, the most you have to take is 25. And by the way, if there's multiple coins, we go to the smallest one. So you can't say it's 25 things and this one. It doesn't work that way. $10, if it's 10 cents, how many's that? That's 100 dimes. It's a big difference from all the other ones. If it's 5 cents, it's $5. That's actually 100 as well. And if it's a penny, in the old days of the penny, remember the penny? What's the most pennies that you had to take? The answer is 25. So if someone comes and starts to give you pennies, you can say no, and they can't say it's money, you got to take it. It doesn't work that way. There are limits to how much coin you have to take. And there was a case in Winnipeg many years ago. And there was this guy, and I guess he thought he was the Fonz, and he didn't have to pay his parking tickets. So he'd just go park anywhere, he'd get a parking ticket, he would take that parking ticket, throw it in the garbage, never pay it. And there was no real enforcement of these tickets. So he just said, what are you going to do, right? You know, there's no way to enforce it, there was no laws about it, there was no way to get him to pay. So what they did, this guy amounted like about $15,000 in parking tickets, and there was no way to enforce it. So they changed the law and made there be a way to enforce it. And they were going to basically take his car if he didn't pay for it, so they kind of had to. And he was mad because, you know, he'd gone through life not ever having to pay it. The next thing you know, the law changes and they're actually going to make him pay it. And he doesn't like that because now he has to come up with $15,000 and he didn't like it. So what he did, because he was angry, was he went and got $15,000 in pennies. This went in a dump truck. That's how many there were. And he rolled up to City Hall in Winnipeg with this dump truck full of pennies, and he dumped them on the ground because he was mad. And how many of them did they have to take? 25. So the clerk went out, took 25, went back in, said, okay, you paid 25 cents of this $15,000 bill. And meanwhile, the guy's driven away. And although it's pennies, it's still money, right? So this is downtown Winnipeg, folks, in the 70s. Trust me, it was a pretty scary place. And we had all these alcoholics and street people and everything else that lived down on Main Street and stuff. And they were running to this thing, filling up their shirts, running back to their box behind this museum, right? And filling this and going back and getting all these things. And I'll tell you, it was a fun time in the downtown for the next few months with all these people with all of these pennies because there was still money. But it wasn't legal tender, and then they made him pay it again. He was pissed. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what this is now. This is called discharge by other means. So if it's not performed, it can be discharged by other means. There are 4 of these. The first one is our old friend, novation. A new contract will end an old contract without performance by replacing it. When there's overlap between them, they cannot sit separate. They're bound somehow. One is meant to replace the other one. That new contract, and it has to be a contract with all the elements. Not a new agreement, a new contract that will end the old one. What happened to the old one? It got ended by novation. The second way that this ends is something called frustration. Frustration of contract. So let's say that I say, Tash, would you buy this chalk for me for $1? And you say,
Yes.
and I'm on my way to deliver it to her. And God looks down and says, Murray, you're a sinner. God's always right. All right, so a sinner. And he decides he's going to smite me. He's going to send down a thunderbolt from the heavens to blast me to oblivion. But he misses. Stupid God. All right, he misses, and he hits the chalk and blows up the chalk. Can I give her this chalk? It's not there anymore. So this would be an example of frustration. Here's the test. Frustration is, it's impossible to perform through no fault of either side. It's not my fault I'm a sinner. When it's impossible to perform through no fault of either side. Let's change the facts. You'll see this again, okay? Ray? Okay, so if I said, Ray, would you buy this chalk tomorrow from me for $1? And you say, sure. And then I leave the chalk over here overnight, and we come back tomorrow and it's not here. Is that frustration?
No.
No.
First of all, is it impossible to perform if I have to sell her this chalk? Is it impossible? Yeah, it's gone. Is it through no fault?
No, it's your fault.
It's my fault. I left my chalk that I'm supposed to sell in a place that people come in and take chalk all the time. That's a fault. That would not be frustration. So the test is impossible to perform, no fault on either side. That ends it. There are laws that end contracts without them actually being performed. This could be statute law. It probably is mostly going to be statute law. But there are several examples of this where laws end contracts. So, you people are probably still old enough or young enough or whatever you happen to be to remember when they closed the border to cattle. So the government said you're not shipping any cattle across the border because of BSE, and they were worried about that. And people had contracts to send that. That could, if they put in that statute, all contracts to sell beef to the United States are hereby voided, they've ended that contract. A law ended your obligations. A more common example is bankruptcy. When people go bankrupt, they don't actually pay what they're supposed to pay. They gather up your assets, they figure out your debts, and they say, okay, you've got $100,000 in debt and $10,000 in assets, so we're going to end your obligations by giving everybody that's owed money 10 cents for every dollar they're owed. They don't get the dollar. It isn't performed. They get 10 cents, but that ends your obligations. Bankruptcy ends your obligations under that contract. They can't come back and sue you later on. It's over. So there can be laws that end contract, and there can sometimes be terms in the contract that say, if this happens, our obligations are over. There are many examples of this, but where it's probably important to know about is insurance contracts. So, how many of you have an insurance contract? Okay. Do you know when they don't have to pay? What will end it? What's it say in that contract that says they don't have to pay? There's several of them. So for life insurance, if you don't tell them something, boom, their obligation's over. If a war breaks out, it says in the contract, this contract will be null and void in the event that Canada goes to war. And it'll end the contractual obligations. And they learned that because in World War II, in London, where we got a lot of these things from, right? London had the shit bombed out of it, right? It was just demolished. The Germans came in and just demolished London. And we did the same to Germany, or things are the same. Just demolished Germany. Just unbelievable the damage that was done. Well, some of these people, a lot of them had insurance contracts, and guess what happened? They had to pay because they didn't have that clause in there. And it was a ton of money because it got demolished. They learned their lesson, and now they have a clause in the contract that says, war breaks out, we're done. I'm not going to finish off everything here, but I am going to talk to you just one more thing so that you get started. I'm going to explain this in greater detail later, what this really means. If it's not performed and it isn't discharged by their means, it is breached. I'm going to explain breach next week. It won't take me very long. I expect that it'll be in about another half an hour before we're finished completely, all the material, which means we have to fill the remaining time with something. So I'm going to make you do homework. This will be hard. There are some twisty, nasty aspects to your homework. So, there are a couple of case studies. I think we'll deal with the two of them first, and then we'll deal with the next one later. So, I don't think you guys have done the welding, the book. Have you done that? We talked about the welding book? No. Okay. So, there's a woman who buys a book. That's a very simple, quick one. Got it? Analyze that according to what you know. So, analyzing this is take what you've learned and apply it in some sort of system to the fact situations. But you have to know when to zig and when to zag. The basic way you do it is, are there all the elements? Are there any flaws? What's the ending? Okay, that's the basic way. So if you want to do this well, you should always write out the test for what you're dealing with. Even though you know it, even though you think you know it, you go, I don't have to write that down, I know it, write it down. That muscle memory is very important. And it can help you not make mistakes. So I want you to do that one, and I want you to do the wedding planner. Find all of the obligations, all of the contracts or agreements, assess them as to whether they're contracts, determine whether they're breached, take them to the endings, do them all. That should be enough for next week. If you're strapped for time or have lots of time this week and aren't later, the next one we're going to do, and I don't think we're going to get to it next week, is the Slicer Woods case study about the golfing. They should all be on the shared directory in my folder, which is KERNAGHANM. You can access it from home. So it's S drive, which is shared, and then there's business, and then there's mine, which is my last name and first initial. And in there you'll see a folder that's called Law 1, and in it you'll see Contract Case Study 1, Contract Case Study 2, I think, and Contract Case Study 3. That's what I think they're called. But you'll recognize them. One of them's the book. The second one is the wedding. Find all the agreements, analyze them. There's some nasty stuff in there.
I know them short, challenging, and hard.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, did I?
Yeah.
All right. So do short, challenging, I think. And that's for next week. Write them all up. If you can't write it up, you'll find out why. That's important.
บอกไปแล้วที่มาแล้ว